Thank you very much, Mathani. I'm delighted to be serving under your chairmanship this afternoon. And it does strike me, I'm pleased to see that with you, me and the Minister, we have strong East London representation in the chamber today. And I'm also very pleased the Work and Pensions Select Committee is strongly represented in the debate. And actually, I think there is quite a significant crossover between this issue we're talking about, the digital divide, and the concerns that the Work and Pensions Select Committee has been engaged with. Let me just begin, if I may, Ms Ali, with a tribute to the Honourable Member for North Devon, who's the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Broadband and Digital Communications. And I'm the vice chair of that group, but before her recent well-deserved promotion, she was the sponsor of this debate, the initiator of it. She's not able to lead on it, given her current position, but I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to do so as a rather poor substitute. But there's been dramatic progress, as we all know, in getting people online since March of last year. Lloyds Bank's UK Digital Consumer Index, published in May, reports, and I quote, "In the last 12 months, 1.5 million more people have started using the internet, resulting in 95% of people now being online." And they go on to say, we've made 5 years' worth of progress in one. It has been a pretty dramatic change. They make the point that it is, quote, well evidenced that the people using digital tools and services have a real advantage. And of course, during the pandemic, as they point out, it's moved from an advantage to a necessity. The fact that so many have come newly online is an opportunity for us to build on. But 2.6 million people still are not online. Ofcom reported in July that 2 million households struggle with the costs of broadband or with smartphone services, with some of them staying offline as a result of those cost barriers. And 10 million people lack basic digital skills. The government's digital inclusion strategy, I'm sorry to say, has not been updated since 2014. I think it's high time that it was. The topic hasn't had the priority in government, which I hope perhaps it will have in the period ahead. I warmly welcome the Minister to her relatively recently taken up post, and I do hope she'll be able, in winding up the debate, to hold out the prospect of a new priority for digital inclusion and of policies enabling real progress on it in the period ahead. The Good Things Foundation focuses its quite an impressive range of programmes on this digital divide. And they identify in their document, Blueprint to Fix the Digital Divide, published in September, 3 requirements. Number 1, digital skills. Number 2, community support. And number 3, affordable internet. And I want to use those 3 headings in my remarks in opening this debate. So digital skills, first of all, progress with skills, digital skills, is very important for levelling up. The Lloyds Bank report pointed out that people using digital services are, quote, more likely to build their saving reserves, find new ways to save money, can more easily find and access new information, plus manage their well-being. We might add that they can also more readily look for a job, apply for universal credit, manage their universal credit account online as well. And there is a real levelling up challenge here, whereas according to Ofcom, fewer than 21% of people in London are limited internet users. That proportion is almost twice as high as that, at 38% in the region represented by my honourable friend on the shadow front bench this afternoon in the northeast, with the other nations and regions between those 2 figures. And levels of engagement are much less within regions among benefit claimants than others. So I do hope that digital inclusion, development of digital skills will be supported by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and that the government will support local initiatives that are being taken to tackle the problem, like Andy Street's digital catch-up programme in the West Midlands, to help those who can't use the internet to learn digital skills, and Andy Burnham's ambition for Greater Manchester to help all 25s and under, over 75s and disabled people to get online. The government's entitlement for people to get full funding for essential digital skills qualifications is welcome, but we need to go further. Level 1 qualifications aren't meeting the needs of local employers, while those who stand to gain the most are least likely to engage if they don't first get informal community-based help. Age is the biggest determinant, with older people less likely to have digital skills. Age UK reports that in the first quarter of this calendar year, 40% of over 75s and 12% of 65 to 74-year-olds had not used the internet in the previous 3 months. But there is a big group of younger people who need help as well. Ofcom's 2021 technology tracker research found that amongst school-aged children, 4 to 18, 8 in 10 had access all of the time to an appropriate device at home to enable them to connect to the internet for online schoolwork or online learning as needed. Of the remainder, 13% had access some of the time, but 2% rarely had access and 2% never had. A significant group of fully excluded school-age children. Over a fifth of the respondents to a survey reported by Vodafone, report last month on the UK's digital divide, didn't have the software in their household to complete their work, education or leisure pursuits. We need to reflect as well on the digital skills that more and more people in work are going to have to acquire. The government's lifetime skills guarantee, I think, does need directly to address this. Tech UK has highlighted the gap between the upsurge in demand for digitally skilled workers in areas like coding, on the one hand, and the limited opportunities to retrain in those fields, with a need for immediate action to close this growing digital skills gap. By 2030, it's estimated that 9 out of 10 workers are going to need to learn new skills to do their jobs at a cost of well over £1 billion a year. So that brings us to the second area, community support. Helen Milner, who's the Chief Executive of the Good Things Foundation, has called for support to develop, and I quote, a national network of at least 10,000 trusted places where people can get community help with digital inclusion, reaching into villages, towns and cities, and supporting COVID-19 recovery. A very good example, Ms. Ali, of such a place is Skills Enterprise, a charity based in Bonnie Downs Baptist Church in my constituency, founded in 2006 by the energetic social entrepreneur Malathi Muthu. It's a small but very effective training provider, quickly reorganised for the pandemic to stop people who were already digitally excluded from being further isolated. The Good Things Foundation helped by providing devices which they could distribute in its Devices.now partnership with Future.now, which raised over £1.5 million nationally to supply devices and data. And Skills Enterprise used that so that people who would not otherwise have been able to could get online for the pandemic. The number of service users Skills Enterprise supported increased by 50% during the pandemic. They're now supporting 160 people. I presented certificates to a number of them on a visit last month. They've helped people setting up businesses who were people who were homeschooling, or just people who were simply having to self-isolate, showing them how to download and use things like Zoom. They've helped people with online shopping and banking. They've helped a large number of people apply for universal credit as applications became online only during the pandemic. And what they found was that virtual form-filling sessions typically lasted around 3 hours over the telephone for applicants who were not digitally confident and just needed to be talked through the process of applying for universal credit. And Skills Enterprise has worked with Job Centre Plus, I'm pleased to say, as well. 2 people were able to save £300 a year after Skills Enterprise helped them switch energy providers online, and 23 people who they've worked with have found jobs during the pandemic, thanks to the acquisition of new digital skills. So Skills Enterprise is an example of exactly the kind of place that the Good Things Foundation says we need across the country. I think they're right about that. It's having a very positive local impact. But there aren't enough centres like that around. Funding from central government, I think, is needed urgently to deploy digital champions around the country and to support grassroots organisations to address the divide. And then the third area is affordable internet. The scaling back of the government's ambitions for connectivity has been a big disappointment. The government started with a target of 100% fibre by 2025. That was downgraded to 100% gigabit by 2025, and then down again to 85% gigabit by 2025. We are now falling further behind the rest of Europe. We really should be doing better than this. £5 billion has been provided, but only a fraction, as I understand it, is now going to be invested by 2025, the rest not until later. Openreach, Mazzali, has estimated that a nationwide full fibre deployment could add £59 billion to the UK economy by 2025, with growth so elusive in the economy and the Chancellor forecasting that it's going to be down to 1.3% by the end of his forecast period. That sort of growth is a prize we cannot afford to forego. The government's shared rural network scheme aims to provide 4G coverage to 95% of the UK by 2025. Vodafone, I think, has announced coverage of 2 Welsh villages under that scheme, but I don't know of any other announcements to increase coverage made by UK mobile operators as yet as part of this initiative, and I welcome if the Minister can update us on progress with it and whether there are prospects for more such projects in the near future. The universal service obligation launched by the government in March, which I welcome, allows rural households to demand connectivity from BT, but it does seem that some of that connectivity might have a very high price indeed, with reports of 60,000 households being charged up to £100,000 each in order to gain the access being provided. And I wonder, again, if the Minister can give us some reassurance on that front, that the access that the USO ensures will be affordable access, and an indication as well of the extent to which the USO has been effective in the first 6 months or so of its operation in extending access. The Broadband Stakeholder Group, whose work I commend, has set out a range of ideas for steps the government can take to increase access in the hardest to reach areas, and I hope ministers will take those ideas forward. But cost is the price to users is a major issue. Households with the lowest income spend nearly 4 times more as a proportion of their disposable income on fixed broadband compared to the average, and Ofcom report that at least 100,000 households, and possibly much more than that, but at least 100,000 are unlikely to gain internet access in the next year because of the cost they would have to pay to get it. And Ofcom research also found that 4% of families with school-aged children relied solely on mobile devices in the pandemic. So I welcome, Mazzali, the efforts of telcos and others with innovative partnerships and new social tariffs. TalkTalk's partnership with DWP provides eligible job seekers with an uncapped broadband service for 6 months to help them through job search, with DWP paying the fixed cost of the connection and TalkTalk offering the service on a not-for-profit basis. I welcome that sort of imaginative approach and the partnership that's been established there. Vodafone has a buy one, give one scheme in partnership with the Trussell Trust. I welcome that as well. BT, Community Fibre, Hyperoptic, KCOM, Virgin Media and Voxy each offer at least one targeted tariff with unlimited internet access, priced with varying degrees of affordability. I think some of them are offered at £10 a month, which is very good. Some are rather more than that. But I would ask the Minister if she is keeping under consideration the possibility of imposing a requirement for social tariffs on all providers. So, Ms Ali, there's clearly a great deal more to be done on this front. There can be very little doubt now, or very little dispute after the pandemic, about the central place of digital inclusion within any programme for levelling up. The pandemic has rapidly accelerated take-up, but it's also deepened the disadvantage experienced by those who don't yet have digital access. I hope the Minister will be able to reassure the House that the government recognises the crucial importance of this issue and that she'll prioritise making progress on it in the spending review period ahead.